Hey everybody. So today we're going to talk about Python dictionaries and JSON parsing. This is really important if you're ever going to be working with any web APIs to get data, because most of the formats that you'll get from web APIs are going to be JSON objects or JSON files, probably just JSON objects and a string response. So um, when you use, for example, something like the requests library, you're going to use requests and you're going to say request.get, and you'll get data back from an API, like a web API server, and you'll give them your auth token usually, and it'll authenticate your token and say, yep, you're good to go, and what you're asking for is okay, you have permission to get what you're asking for, and you're not rate limited and all that. And then when they give you the information that you're asking for, which all this happens in the span of microseconds, but anyway, when they give you the information you're asking for, it'll return that data to you, to your own router or whatever internet you're on. It'll return that data to you and your device, and your Python script will store that in a variable, it'll store that in memory, and it'll store that as a string, and then to load that into from a JSON string into a Python object, you would use the import JSON, the JSON library here, and you can use json.loads. And I will show you an example of that. I won't go through the whole thing, but I'll show you like what that looks like at least. But let's first talk about what Python dictionaries are before we even get into that. Sorry, excuse me. So, um, basically, a Python dictionary is an object that kind of looks like this. Now, you can ignore the slash here. This is just to get it on a different line. But the object here is showing you how to get the data that you need. So, this is basically a JSON object that represents a photo from Pexel's API. And this is the ID of the photo on Pexel servers. This is the height and width in pixels. This is the URL that links directly to the photo on the, it's like the Pexels post of the photo. This is the person of the user that took the photo, and this is the link to their profile specifically. This is their ID in their database of users. This is the average color and hex value of the, well, it's not really in hex, but it's the average color of the photo. And these are all the links to the photo in a compressed and original form. And this is if it has been liked by us for our user. This is specifically for your user that you're getting the data from in your API. So you have to set up a bot user to get data from pixels. So this is if you've liked the photo. And this is the alt text explaining what's in the photo, basically. So all this data is pretty handy. And so let's say you're trying to access any of this information. Like, let's say you want to get this ID number, or let's say you want to get the height. Like, let's say you have some kind of if statement that says, like, if the height is higher than this number and if the width is higher than this number, then I want to use this photo because I want a really high resolution photo, right? This is how you would get those information. So to get the height number, all you'd have to do is just, you have to, so this is the name of the dictionary object. Like I said, you could ignore the slash, just pretend it doesn't exist. For the sake of argument, this is what it looks like normally. And so this, let's say you have a dictionary. So in order to get that ID and reference that ID, you would say, okay, I want to get the ID number, for example. So in order to get the ID, you would type the name of your dictionary, then you put some braces, and then you put the key here. So this is your key, and this is your value, and these are called key-value pairs. So a dictionary is basically just a big combination of keys and values as key-value pairs. And so this is how you access those. So this line of code right here, this little chunk of code represents this number. So anything I do to this will give me this number. In fact, I could say return key value, like return example dictionary ID to get the key, and then this is how I get the value. So return the value minus 1, which doesn't really make sense because that's not what IDs are for. But you could do this, and if I did, it'll end in a 0 as the last number because it ended in a 1 before I subtracted 1. And so that's how you do anything you want to these data points here. So that's how you like manipulate the data and get the data and stuff like that. But we're not going to subtract from the ID because that doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. But anyway, so that's how you get all this top level stuff. But what about this? Because you notice that the key is source, but the value is another dictionary. So how do we access the stuff in this dictionary within the same dictionary that we're already in? Well, the way you would do that is you would just go ahead and type whatever the name of the key is to get to that dictionary, and then within that dictionary you access whatever key you want for whatever value you want. So let's say I want the original quality photo link here. I would just add on an extra bracket that has the key for what I want. So now this chunk of code represents this string, and I can show you that by running this. So you can say right here, this is the exact same string as this. And if I go to this, it takes me to the photo. In case you were wondering what the photo actually looks like, that's what it is. So that's pretty great. So, whoops, sorry. There you go. So that's how you get access to whatever key or value you want. Now, real quick, I'll just show you real fast. So in order to, let's say you're starting with a blank dictionary. So let's say you have a blank dictionary and you'd say, actually, we're going to say this is just to be consistent with our naming scheme. There we go. So blank dict is equal to, oh, there we go. So now what you do is you create these little open and close curly brackets here. And then in order to add something to it, you would just say blank dictionary. You type out the name, and then you put in brackets, and then this is going to be your key. So I'm going to say example key, and the value of it is going to just be 1. So now I can return the blank dictionary here, and then I can just print the blank dict function, and that will return this. Now, what is it yelling at us? Replace dictionary. Oh yeah, this is just for cleaner code. We don't have to worry about this. Okay, so now you can see now we have a dictionary. An example key is our key, and there's a little colon there, and then there is the 1. So notice this looks very similar to these formats. I know it's hard to see because this is all like spread out, but if this was just one line, it would look like this. It would have the bracket, then it would have the ID, and then it would have a closed bracket. It's the same format, really. And it doesn't have to be, your keys don't have to be strings, and they don't have to be integers or whatever for your values. But the keys do have to be immutable objects. So that is one like limitation of the Python dictionaries. But other than that, you can kind of like there are restrictions on what kind of variable types you can use for key value pairs, but either way. Now let's say I want to iterate through these, and let's say we add another dictionary object item here. So let's say we do blank dictionary example key 2 whoops is equal to 2, right? So now let's say I want to iterate through these. Well, you could just say for key in blank dictionary print key, and that's kind of okay, but to be honest with you, I don't think that this will get us exactly what we want in the cleanest way, because this only gives us the key, right? I mean, that's fine, but we already kind of know what the keys are. I mean, maybe we don't, but you know, how do I get the key, like key and the value at the same time? Or how do I get the value? Like, what if I just want the value? Okay, well then let's say for value in dictionary, print value. But uh-oh, wait a minute, that gave us the key again, because wouldn't you know it, like we learned in our lesson about for loops and while loops, this word only actually means like kind of nothing in Python. It really just means this is the thing that you're going to be iterating through. But just telling Python for value, print value, it's not going to understand that we actually want the value. So the best way to do this, I think, I wouldn't say this is necessarily the cleanest way, but definitely the best practice way to do this, the most comprehensive way, is if you want to get the keys, just do dot keys here, and you have to add a function because it's a method of a dictionary object. So, or you have to add parentheses. Sorry, I think I said that wrong. But yeah, so this is how you get the keys, and this is a little confusing because I say for value in keys. But this is how you get the keys. And to get the values, you would just say dot values. But what if you want both? What if you want keys and value? Well, then you have to add a separate iterator, and then you just change this from keys and values to items. This will give you the key and value. So let's just say key comma value. And what this will do is it'll print out something like example key space 1 and then example key 2 space 2, right? And then you can see it right there. It's still printing out all the other stuff because I didn't get rid of the other stuff, but this is what it just did basically. And then it's printing this because we returned it and we're printing this function. So that's why this is printing. But basically, just the 2 lines there are all you really need to worry about in that case. So that's how you iterate through a dictionary. And this is good because what if your dictionary object is a list, like in terms of what if your values are a list? Like what if this is a list of IDs that are like possible IDs or something? Or what if this is all the possible widths of all the other resolutions of the photo, right? How do I get the highest one out of that? Well, you can iterate through it. If this was a list, then you could say for element in, and then you could say blank, like since we're doing this dictionary, let's say this is a list. In fact, let's just go ahead and make it a list just so I can show you. So let's say 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay. And then you could say for element in blank dictionary, and then you have to add your key. So you would say example key. Then we're going to print the element. And this is going to print 1, 2, 3, 4. The reason this works is because remember, this represents this. So anytime you type this into your code, you are basically telling your code what I'm typing here is whatever this equals. So it's going to print out each one, 1, 2, 3, and 4 in each line, like that. Does that make sense? Cool. So basically, we're going to get rid of this though, because this is kind of all over the place and I don't want it to be too messy. But that's basically how you iterate through a list of things. So I've shown you how to access items in a dictionary, and I've shown you how to access nested items. I just want to show you real quick how you would go about loading a JSON string or JSON file into Python. So let's say, for example, that we have a JSON string. So let's say hang on. Yeah, I'm just really picky about my PEP 8 standards. So let's say def showing off JSON loads. Okay. Function name doesn't really matter here, but I want it to be somewhat descriptive of what we're doing. So we are going to say JSON string is equal to, and then we're going to say, whoops, I didn't mean to put brackets in there. We're going to put a string here, and then we're going to say example key 1. Oh, I see. Now, we're going to say new dictionary object is going to be equal to json.loads. And then we're going to pass in the JSON string. And I think this should work. I've never done this on my own examples. I've always done it from other requests that I made to APIs, so we're kind of just testing on the fly right now. But this is the basic idea of it. So then we're just going to return. Actually, we're just going to print it this time. We're going to say print new dictionary object and print type new dictionary object. Okay? And then we're going to call this function. And we are going to say showing off JSON loads. And let's go ahead. Let's see, expecting a property name enclosed in double quotes. Enclosed in double quotes. Expecting property name. Expecting property name closed in double quotes. Okay. Oh, I think it's because it wants these items. Okay, hang on one second. Let's just correct that real quick. There we go. So it's really picky apparently about how you use your strings. So just be careful about your string operators there. So yeah, so anyway, so sorry about that, guys. So I've never done that before actually, so we're testing it on the fly. But anyway, so you can see that this is the key. I made it really long, but I wanted it to be descriptive. This is the key, and this is the value. And you can see that it actually did convert the key value pair to be what we wanted it to be, and it classifies it as a Python dictionary object, even though this is actually a string. Now, the reason this is important, because you might think, why would I ever make any dictionaries a string? The reason this is important is because whenever you're accessing an API and you make a request via the request library or curl or whatever other method you use, whenever you're accessing an API that returns a JSON object that looks similar to this, when you say something like requests.get and then you put in your URL, and this URL points to like an API thing, and you say dictionary object is equal to, this is not going to be a dictionary object, even though you've named it that. It's actually going to be a string. So then you have to pass this dictionary object into a JSON.loads. Now, let's say you already have a JSON file on your computer, and it's just like something.json, and it's like something like this. So hang on, I will show you what I mean. So let's make a new file in this library, and let's say new file, and let's say example.json. Okay, and let's just copy this, and we have to change this to false. Otherwise, it's all that we have to change. Okay, so now we have this JSON file here, and let's go ahead and save, and let's go back here. So this is how you show, or this is how you get that JSON file to be a JSON object that you can then print. So this is, our console is getting a little cluttered, so for now we're just gonna like not print anything just for a second, and we're just gonna say pass for the time being. So basically we're gonna say showing off JSON load. Pretty similar name, but there's only one S. So now we're gonna say that we want to, now we need to open this file first, and then we can get data from it. But so basically what we need to do is we need to open this file. Now, I have not done this in a while, so luckily for you, we get to look this up on the fly, and that's gonna be pretty cool. So json.load example in Python. So I guess Geeks for Geeks is probably gonna show us. Yeah. So basically you need to open the file like I was saying. So this is how you open it, and then you just load it into the file. Okay, cool. That's what I needed to know. I just needed to know the open part. So it's just as simple as how I thought it was. So we're going to say that our JSON file is equal to open, and then we're going to name it the string that it is, and then I think you have to open it as a certain type, I think. So I'm going to open it in read mode. I guess you don't have to open it in a read mode. I guess it doesn't matter. So it's not really like a text file, so I guess it doesn't matter at all. So we're just going to do that. And then we are going to say json.load JSON file. And this is going to be our example dictionary object. It's equal to that. So let's go ahead and print our example dictionary object and print the type, whoops, of our example dictionary object. Okay. So now let's go ahead and call this function. Whoops. Okay. Now this is going to be a really big console output because it was a big JSON thing, but it's basically going to print this pretty much. So let's go ahead and run this. Now it will print it in a format that looks like this, so it won't be all fancy and like, you know, open and looking like this. It won't be all stacked. There's a word for this, and I think it's just called flattened, but I can't remember I don't know if that's the exact term for this format of JSON. But yeah, that's basically what it's doing. If you notice, all the information is still the same. It's just printing it all on one line. It's not like printing it out in a fancy format. But all the information is there. So this is kind of the like, now just imagine this as one big string. And this is kind of what you would get back from a server when you call like a server with a request to get information from an API. So anyway, but this is showing if you have it as a file on your computer, whether it's flattened or laid out all fancy or whatever, this is showing how you would get that. So now that I have this, I can just do, and this goes for this too, this new dictionary object and example dictionary object. At any point, I can just print specific things about it. So I can print the source, and then I can print the original like we did before. And that should print me a little link right before this line. And it does. So this is how you access data from a JSON file, specifically within a file itself. And similarly, you can use this exact same format to get this from a request string, or just a string, I guess. It doesn't have to be from a web request, but if for some reason you have a JSON that's in a string, this is how you do that. So you would say new dictionary object, and you put in your source and original, for example, and that's how you would get that. And it's going to print me the same thing, which actually I didn't call the function, so it's not going to print me anything new. But if we say showing off JSON loads, then I print that, and then it will tell me all that information. So hang on, so it didn't, oh yeah, because we didn't, this isn't the same like string, so it's not gonna print me that. But you can just do example key to show off JSON loads. Okay, so now I can run that, and now it'll tell me 1 right there. That's the key, and it's 1. Or that's the value of this key, and the value is 1. That's what I meant to say. So that's just a basic introduction to JSON parsing, and it's really a lot simpler than it looks. I mean, I think this just looks really scary at first, because you're like, whoa, this is a lot of stuff. But it's really simple. Like, you don't, the thing about JSON and Python dictionaries is that you don't need to access all this at once. The whole point is that it's there when you need it, you know? It's like looking at a bookshelf with a bunch of books and thinking like, whoa, this is a lot. But it's like if they're just reference books, like you only need to reference something within a book. And this is a good example of a reference book, because it's like, this is like your bookshelf, and this is a book, and these are the pages in the book. And on this page, this is what you want. So it's like even though this looks like a crap ton of information, it's just a way to like take a bunch of attributes of an object and put it all in one place So this is the photo's ID, this is its width, this is its height, this is its URL, this is the photographer, and all this. And so you're taking a bunch of attributes about an object, which is why it's called object notation, and you're storing all these attributes in one single like little thing here, and you can just access a specific attribute as you need it. So if I need the ID, I just say name of this dictionary, and then I just put in brackets, and then I put the key that I need. Let's say I need to get the ID, so I put in the ID, and then boom, I have it right there. That's the beauty of JSON objects and Python dictionaries. I know they look very like complex and scary, but it's one of those things that you can't just look at it all and be like, oh my god, because it's like, again, you wouldn't just take a bookshelf full of reference books and just read each one page by page, word by word for the entire bookshelf for like 1,000 books. You know, it'd be kind of ridiculous. You don't need to go through all this. You don't even need to care what's in any of this. You just need to care the specific thing that you need in that specific moment. And that's the beauty of JSON objects, is that they are a really nice, easy way to get you all the information that you need as you need it, not all of it at once. So, anyway, so that's just a really basic introduction. If you feel like you need to learn a little bit more about specific Python dictionary information, just feel free to watch other videos on it. Maybe I'll post something about it eventually, a little more in depth. But that's just a really basic intro to it, and that explains like the I didn't really go over the request library, but it explains the JSON library and when you would want to use it. So you just import it at the top of your script, and then that creates a global namespace, so a bunch of functions you can use and all your other functions. And then you can just use JSON, which is the name of the library we import, and then .loads, which is the name of the method that we're using. And then this is what we're passing into the loads. And by the way, the difference between loads and load is that loads with an S, the S is for string, so you're passing in a string. See, this is a string. Whereas this, I'm passing in a file. This is a JSON file, and I'm passing in a file for load. And that, honestly, it took me forever to learn the difference between those two. But, yeah. There's also JSON dumps, by the way, and dumps. So, JSON.dump, for example, it basically does the opposite of load. So dump is like, it basically stores a Python dictionary to a file, whereas load takes a file and stores it in a Python dictionary. So dump is the opposite of load, and dumps with an S is the opposite of loads. So that's really the only 4 methods from the JSON library that you need to know just for basic stuff. But more often than not, you're probably not even going to use dump or dumps. It really just depends on what your application is. But I find I don't really need to use it that often myself. But maybe you do. Who knows? But anyway, that's just a basic introduction to those things. So I just wanted to share that with you guys. And if you have any questions, just feel free to ask me. Otherwise, I hope you guys have a wonderful day. Thank you so much. Bye.